Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to start by appreciating your work and the ranking member's work in bringing us to where we are today. But as you know, holding drug companies accountable for increasing the price of existing drugs year after year, often several times within 1 year, is one of my top priorities. I constantly hear from constituents about the skyrocketing prices of prescription drugs, and I know that colleagues on both sides of the aisle hear that too. And I am very pleased to have been able to work with Senator Braun, Senator Murkowski, and Senator Smith to introduce the Bipartisan Fair Drug Pricing Act. This will bring basic transparency for drug companies that are systematically jacking up the prices of prescription drugs. In the past 5 years, prices of brand name drugs have increased at 10 times the rate of inflation. Medicare spends 23% of its budget on prescription drugs. And in 2016, Medicare spent $130 billion on prescription drugs. American taxpayers are footing a big part of the bill for the rising cost of drugs, and it is only fair to call on drug companies to share more important information on why they are increasing the prices for the drugs that our constituents depend upon, sometimes for their very lives. My constituent Jackie from Muskego, Wisconsin, was diagnosed with an incurable blood cancer in August of 2015. She takes a drug called Revlimid. This medication, which keeps her alive, costs up to $21,000 per year. Since 2017, the drug company has increased the price of Revlimid by nearly 25%. Another constituent, Dylan from Waupun, Wisconsin, is 12 years old, and he's been living with type 1 diabetes for most of his life. He needs insulin every day to live. He is worried that the cost of insulin keeps going up. Diabetics like him will no longer be able to afford this critically needed medication. In the last decade, the 3 companies that manufacture insulin for the U.S. Market increased the price of the drug by 700%, in lockstep, I might add. I remember well a hearing with Secretary Azar where I asked him what would he say to my constituents with diabetes about the price increases that they have experienced in recent years. He has some expertise, having come from one of those companies that produces insulin. And his answer was, it's complicated. I said, I can't go back to my constituents and simply say, it's complicated. We have to do more. We have to lift the veil of secrecy that has allowed our constituents to have to ration insulin, to not be able to have a spare EpiPen for a child at school, that makes them not buy a necessary inhaler, and all of the other things that we hear about from our constituents. To that end, I offer Baldwin Braun Amendment 1 and would make a couple last points in support of that. It's clear that it is time for our constituents and the American taxpayer to know what we are getting for our money. And I understand that there are concerns about the specific requirements and data that our legislation would require companies to report. In fact, I know that as colleagues, we've been working over the last several weeks to try to address some of these issues. But I remain committed to continue to work on this issue moving forward. I do want to just say that I have strong concerns with the suggestion that others have made that we preempt state laws on transparency for a weaker federal standard. I think it's critically important for companies to report specific metrics related to the drugs that they increase in price, like research and development activities, marketing, advertising, and other specific items. The American public has sent us all a clear message that they want us to take action to hold these drug corporations accountable, to require transparency, and it is why I would ask for a roll call vote on this amendment and say that I've heard some report that there may be a side-by-side that would would preempt state laws. If so, I would urge my colleagues to support Baldwin Brown number 1 and oppose any side-by-side that might be offered.